As you guys can tell from the title of this video, the goal for this month is actually to turn this vegetable garden that I have that produces some vegetables for me to eat into a market garden that I can grow enough produce to sell to my local community. The first phase of my business plan was to go ahead and get ducks and chickens so that way I could sell the duck and chicken eggs. On Big Island, Hawaii, you could find duck eggs for about $10 a dozen, and you could sell chicken eggs for about $8 a dozen for farm fresh. That's like all organic, not like factory farm, obviously. But I'm gonna go ahead and sell mine for $5 a dozen inside my Honesty box. And the goal of that is to bring people to the Honesty box for cheap eggs, and hopefully they'll go ahead and buy some produce while they're there. Right now in the garden, I have tomatoes that aren't really as good as that I would hope for. I mean, they taste delicious, but they're not the size or color or beauty that I would hope for to sell in an Honesty box. So I'm gonna actually tear these out and replace them with something else. But I do need to put tomatoes in the Honesty box, so we'll have to go and grow them. Here in this strip, I have broccoli, and it all went to seed, so that way I could seed save this broccoli, and you guys can see it right here. So in this video, I need to go ahead and harvest this and put this in a bucket so that way I can collect the seed. And then we need to tear this out and replace it with something that we can go ahead and sell. Here is jalapenos. I'm actually not gonna tear these out. I wanna sell these in the market garden. They were just chewed up a lot by the chickens, but they are now coming back with new green and new peppers. This row here is my taro. It's a specific variety of taro. It has a purple stem here, as you guys can see. I don't remember the name of this taro variety, but if you know taro variety names and you guys know what it is, go ahead and comment down below if you think you know what it is. And then in this hill, that hill, that hill, and that hill is papaya. This is a hedge wedge where I have flowers growing, which are those orange flowers you see blowing in the wind over there. Here we have eggplant, and our eggplant's actually just starting to produce. So by the end of the month, I'll actually be able to put some eggplant inside the Honesty box, hopefully. And we have little peppers as well. These are Tabasco peppers, so these could go in the Honesty box. And I actually just started planting this one. This is eggplant mixed with peppers, again, for the Honesty box. This is a pineapple bed with tomatillos. You got them here. Hopefully I can produce enough, but we'll just go ahead and see how many I get. I still have a bucket of tomatillos that I can go ahead and plant. This needs to get cleaned up, and we'll maybe expand this into something. We'll go ahead and see. This plot here needs to get cleaned up. This is my pineapple patch. It had broccoli in it, but it just didn't do good. I already ate most of the broccoli and then let the other stuff go to seed when I went on vacation. This one here also needs to get cleaned up. This is collard greens. These were really delicious, but now that we're getting into the hot summer, they're starting to get a little bit bitter tasting and burnt, and they're not as good. So we're gonna go ahead and clean these up and replace it with something else. And then these two hugelkultur mounds are actually gonna get cleaned up, and I'm gonna replace them with taro, because down on the end, when I get over there, I'll explain. And then there's these three mounds here that we get stuff planted into them. There's a hugelkultur mound underneath all this vegetation that we're gonna go ahead and clear up and then put something there as well. This is broccoli we need to go ahead and clean. This is a bed that had corn in it at one time, but then it went fallow, so we need to clean this up and bring this back to production capacity. And then this is my beautiful taro. I don't remember the name of it, but it has something to do with this red spot here. I want to say it's like red dot or red star taro or something like that. Again, if you know taro varieties, you can go ahead and comment down below, but I will be producing taro for the Honesty box, and you guys can see a lot of these pups breaking off, these keiki, and I'm actually gonna use them to seed the next two taro beds over here. And when we clean up this, I'll probably produce this as a taro bed. So these three hugelkultur mounds will turn into these taro beds here, and then kick off our production in taro, so that way we could potentially make poi and sell it too. So that's pretty much all I have that we're gonna do. And this big area here was where the chickens were, and we're actually gonna go ahead and replace this all and clean this up and build beds like it is here and expand this. And then where you guys see the chicken wire or the chicken net is now, this is also going to be the garden. So we have a lot to do in the next 45 days to get all this transformed into a garden, so we have a lot ahead of us. So let's go ahead and get started. I'm just taking the seed heads of the ones that look the best. This does not look good right here, this tip. So you can see that these seed heads are really fat and full, and these are the ones that we're collecting and putting in our bucket over there. All right, so I would say that that is enough broccoli seed to save for the next crop. So now we can go ahead and clear this out. Now I'm just gonna go ahead and use my machete to chop down the broccoli here, and I'll toss it into the chicken pen. As you guys can see here, now the bed next to me is clear. We cleared out all this broccoli. It actually took me longer to pull it all up out of the ground and weed this area and make it look how it is now than it was to chop it down with the machete, so it took longer to do that. But now that this is all clear, all I have to do now is take the hoe, mix this up real good, and the chickens are working up a pile of mulch right now. But what I want to do is plant this out, and then when they start to grow from seedlings, I will go ahead and take the mulch the chickens are working on now, in 2 to 3 weeks use that to put this on top, and then that'll be the fertilizer for this season for it. But right now this bed is clear, and we can mark that off the bucket list. This is also a broccoli bed, but it doesn't have any seeds that are desirable or any traits that I'm looking for. The seed heads on this one are a lot smaller, doesn't look that good, and the heads that came off of them were a lot smaller, so I don't want to breed these ones. So we're just going to chop these ones down and give it to the chickens. Now we got this broccoli bed cleared out. All I got to do is go ahead and pull out some of these weeds. What I'm mainly going to do is just take a hoe to it, and when I do that, I'll just take these weeds out then. But for now, this is good, and we can use this bed too. This garden plot here is my pineapple patch. There's a pineapple here, and there's a couple of them surrounded here. I think a couple of them died. But I also tried to plant broccoli in between the pineapples so that way I can get something like out of this plot during the time of the pineapple growing. The broccoli did not work out that well here, so what we're going to do is chop it up, clear it out, and just keep the pineapples in place. But I'm just going to clean up the bed. While I was pulling out one of the broccoli plants, I pulled up this little worm. So let's go ahead and feed it to the chickens. Guess what? I got a surprise for you. Now I only got one, so we're gonna do it like a basketball thing. I'm gonna toss it up, and first one to get it wins. Everyone see the wormy? Oh, it's gone. She gobbled it down that quickly, guys. Okay, so I've gone ahead and cleared out this bed here. I do need a weed whack around the edges and clean up that over there. It's mostly thorns, so I don't want to be pulling on it with no gloves right now. But I went through and pretty much cleared up all the weeds. I can come back through and clean up a little bit more here and there. I should have kept up more on top of this one. It wouldn't have been so bad. A couple of the pineapples I had to like pull out of the ground and like pull the weeds out of them because the weed roots like grew into the pineapple cracks, and that was just a pain. So if I would just kept up on this, it wouldn't have been a problem. So that's just something I need to take mine in the future. In the pineapple beds, just weed it as soon as I see the weeds. I recently ordered a beehive online, and when it got delivered, it was delivered like this. And for some reason I thought that it would be put together, but it's in pieces right now and I have to put it together. But it's an experience that I otherwise wouldn't have gotten, and it was cheaper, and that's probably why it was cheaper. But as part of my business plan, I wanted to get bees because in the future I want to open up a meadery, which is kind of like a winery, except you use honey instead of sugar in the process of making wine, and that's called mead. But I wanted to go ahead and get started on getting the bees ready and learning about bees and doing all that now instead of when the winery is built, so that way I already have some experience in one thing and I'm not overwhelming myself by trying to learn how to open up a meadery as well as learn how to do bees at the same time. So I'm just getting prepared ahead of the game. So go ahead and get started. A little foamy beer, but it's cold, so that's good. More of these thingies. Some of them. I would imagine those are the side pieces of the frames. And the rubber band broke, and that's why they're free. Okay. Well, now we got one of them with all the frames done. Now we just got to get on to the second one. Now that we have both of the boxes done with both of the frames done, we can go ahead and set up the hive. Okay, so I have the beehive all put together and I have it resting on a piece of scrap wood that I threw together for the platform. And it's next to this water source over here. It doesn't have water right now. It's like one of them estuarial pools, like a water source that like holds water for a short period of time, then dries up. But what we're gonna do is I'm not gonna purchase bees at first. I'm gonna see if I can catch some of the wild bees that are around here. There's a lot of honeybees in the jungle. There's a lot of beehives or bee farmers as well, and you know, they must have swarms that escape. So what we're gonna try to do is catch our own, and we're gonna give ourselves a little bit of an edge by using this swarm attractant. So let's go ahead and swab this on our hive. We gotta crack it and then shake it upside down. And then it says to rub it on the entrance baseboard and the entrance, like the hole. And now that I'm done, I'm just gonna go ahead and toss it inside like the instructions say. So in these garden beds behind me, I was actually growing beans, but they didn't work out because, again, the chickens were being fence trained. They got out and kind of ate everything. But I have a lot of papaya here, and I want to increase the papaya production on my farm so I can sell it, and also as animal feed because it grows all year round here in Hawaii. So I have this bucket of papaya saplings, so I'm just going to go ahead and separate these out and plant them into the beds. I did a little bit of weeding on these beds, but I didn't do too much because I'm going to come through with the weed whacker and clean it up. But I'm going to take these papaya trees and plant them about a foot apart on these 3 mounds. The reason being that I'm going to plant them so close is that I grew these from seed and I don't know which ones are male, female, or hermaphroditic. So the males, I'm going to cut them down and we don't need them, and we'll just be left with the females. So the idea is if I plant them every foot, some of them might end up being a foot apart, but others will be kind of cleared because they might be males. So we're just going to hedge our bets and plant them a little bit closer. So I still have a couple papaya left in my bucket, and I will plant them somewhere else, but we have 15 papaya trees planted here in these 3 rows. There are 5 trees for each row, spaced about 1.5 feet apart, maybe 15 to 16 inches more or less, between each other. And like I said before, we'll go ahead and clear out the ones that are males. So the water that I use is actually the duck booty juice water, the pond water that I give them. I just take this, put it in the watering can, water the plants with it, and I give them fresh water. Woo, it's stinky. Some duck booty juice water.
Man, I'm thirsty. Might as well have some of this booty sweat I got back in Da Nang.
And this duck booty juice water, that's good fertilizer. It has a lot of duck manure in there and all this other microbes that'll just energize this and help them get a good start. In this plot here, we're actually going to go ahead and plant the remaining of my tomatillos. I have some here in this 5-gallon bucket, I think about 8 or so, so let's go ahead and plant them in here. So in the end, I only had 7 tomatillos, and I just go ahead and plant them here, and I'm just going to use the remaining of the bucket water to water them in. They should be good for now. And I'll just keep an eye on them for the next few days and water them as needed. So I ended up going down to the county dump and getting some free composted mulch. I do that every Saturday, the first Saturday of the month, and the second Wednesday of the month where you can buy it. And I use it in the chicken run so the chickens have something to dig up, but I also use it in the garden. I let the chickens use it first because I've noticed that just because it's composted, it doesn't mean that it's necessarily rich in nutrients like nitrogen or phosphorus or potassium or calcium or any of the other micronutrients that plants need. So I put it in the chicken run for a few weeks, up to a month, let them dig through it and poop in it, and that kind of supercharges it. And then I take it out and use it in the garden to grow vegetables. Well, here's our pile. It's all done. It took me about an hour to empty out the back of the truck, and I start in one corner and get it all the way down. That way I can grab it like a slice of pizza or like a cake from underneath and just start throwing like chunks of it out of the truck. It took me about an hour, mainly because I was at work and I was kind of like doing this whenever I felt like it. It wasn't like an hour of work solid. It was like I'd go back to the computer and work for like 15 minutes, come out here for like 10 minutes before my computer timed out type deal, and then go back to work. And then I got it knocked out. So the chickens now, this is part of their job where I put it in here. They kind of over the week, you know, rake it down and poop in it and add nutrients. And then every weekend I just pile it back up to a pile, and the process repeats itself for about a month, and this will break down even more. It's actually really hot because it's still composting. And the chickens actually like to lay in this at night. I find a lot of them just sitting on this instead of going to their roost, and I imagine it's because it's warm and they like it on their little warm bums. Look, this one's coming up here to check it out. She sees the steam coming off of it. She's like, ooh, fresh heat in the pile. Yeah. So this is what it looks like after the grass is cut. It looks a lot better. It's not as tall. It's a lot easier to walk through, and it looks a lot neater as well. These are the last two things that I really need to clear before we start expanding. This is a hugelkultur mound that's kind of overgrown. So I need to take the machete and the weed whacker and clean that up, but the weed whacker is dead. And then this garden plot here, there's some rocks in the grass, so we need to remove them. But I need the weed whacker to kind of clean this up, and then we could put like a bunch of mulch down on top and kind of suffocate the rest of the grass and then plant into that. And same thing with this, we just got to kind of clean it up and then it's ready to go. As you guys can see here, I've gone ahead and built a wood pile and burned it all the way down the line, and there are 3 reasons that I've done that. And the first reason being is to remove the weed seeds in the grass. The second reason is to remove any pests that might be buried in the soil or living in this area, so that way we have a clean slate when we go to plant the next thing. And the third reason that I burn this is to add nutrients back to the soil. One of them will be the wood ash that will lower the pH. I meant raise the pH, I apologize, because the volcanic soil here is really acidic. So we need to bring that pH level up just a little bit, and the wood ash will help with that. And the second thing that'll help is the biochar that we're creating here, or the charcoal. When it rains, it'll get washed down into the soil, and those cracks in the charcoal will create a lot of habitat for microorganisms that live in the soil. So it'll basically double the surface area of the soil that they can live in, which is the humus layer of the soil. So that's why I've gone ahead and done this. So we're just gonna let this cool, and then the next day we'll go ahead and plant something in here. So it's actually cooled off a lot quicker than I thought. It's been about 4 hours after I burned it, and all this stuff can now get removed. So that's what I'm gonna go ahead and do, so we can go ahead and plant some squash. So before planting, I just went ahead and laid out the squash so that way I have the spacing. Now I'm gonna go ahead and get my broken pickaxe to dig, and then I can go ahead and plant them. They're all getting some of the duck booty juice water to fertilize them and get them ready. For these 2 beds, I just got to remove the corn. It didn't do that good. It only grew about 1 foot tall. I was hoping it would do better. This is actually a field corn, blue Indian corn. It's called Hopi corn. I wanted to make some blue tortilla chips out of it, but it didn't do that good here. The main reason is that this is a new start area, and I was kind of expecting too much from it. But what it did do is it held the soil and the mulch down on top of this. You might be looking at this and think, well, Mr. Keene, I see a lot of soil that's fallen away from the logs here, and you're right, and that's because of my chickens. It's not because it naturally happened, it's because the chickens dug it away from here. The area that's over there behind the camera was where the chickens were, and at a certain age they could walk through the fence, and they were being fence trained, so they had free reign to the garden, and that's why the garden looks so bad. And that's why we're bringing it up back up to standards, so we can do stuff or make money. So I've gone ahead and collected a wheelbarrow of our composted chicken and duck manure, and we're going to go ahead and place this on our hugelkultur mounds. And hugelkultur mounds is a German word for basically buried logs. In here there are large logs, and we're placing the mulch on top, and the logs will break down over time, releasing nutrients back into the soil for 5-10 years. So it's a good way to get them up off the ground as well and create more vertical growing space, because now I can plant on top and on the sides. So we just need to repair it because the chickens kind of scratched away at it, and it won't take much mulch just to cover up the logs again, and then we can plant our taro. So I've gone ahead and collected enough mulch to finish off these 2 hugelkultur mounds that we're going to plant our taro into. And if you guys don't know, the Hawaiian word for taro is kalo, K-A-L-O. And we're going to go over to our taro patch in a second to collect the keikis, which are the little children of the taro plants. And we're going to break them off and place them in here. And I think I'm going to put about 6 of them on each of the hugelkultur mounds, and they will spread. And I'll show you guys how they do that in a second. So as we place these in the future, as they grow, they'll kind of take over this mound, and we can harvest the adults, and the little keikis will then grow up, and then we can harvest them, and they'll make more kids, and then they will just kind of like self-contain themselves in this area. Now they will spread out, but we'll go ahead and break those off and spread them elsewhere in the garden to make more taro patches. So right next to me is one of my taro plants. This is the red dot or purple dot variety. I don't remember exactly the name, but it has this reddish purplish dot in the center of the leaf. They're absolutely gorgeous. They've been here for about 4 months now, and they're really getting big. So I think in about 9 months is when you can harvest taro. But these little ones right down here are the keiki. So we're just gonna go ahead and pull these out of the ground and replant them elsewhere in our garden. So I can only find about 6 keiki that are ready to go. I wanted to make sure that they had enough root mass and that they looked healthy enough and big enough so when we transplant them, they'll go ahead and grow really well and also not stress out too much because they already got the roots necessary to pull up nutrients and moisture. So I got them laid out right here. I'm just going to go along and dig a little hole for them, stick them in, tuck them in good, wish they grow good. Good luck. So here we are, we got our taro all planted. It should take about, I think about 9 months before we can actually get a harvest out of these, so it's going to be a long-term crop. But when they do harvest, they're a pretty valuable crop, as well as it will make a large root mass that we'll be able to sell in our garden, farmer's market. So I think this is going to be a really good addition to our permaculture garden. So you guys will see in the next few videos how it turns out. I don't know right now, but hopefully you guys will know. So let me know. But if you guys know anything about taro or kalo, make sure you guys comment down below any gardening tips or anything that I might have missed. But what I'm going to do is go ahead and get some of the duck booty juice water and water these in real good so they got some nice nutrients sitting on there and they're watered, so they're just really set to go. We're going to have a nice rainstorm this weekend, so the whole garden is just getting prepared and it'll get nice and rained in. But once these get established, I don't need to worry about them because the mulch will hold on to moisture for a while and also fertilize them over time as it breaks down. So I just went back to the taro bed and pulled out 8 little ones that did have roots and planted the other garden bed as well. So it turns out that I did have enough. So both these hugelkultur mounds are now planted out. So this area that's currently cleared out and that I'm standing in was where the chickens once were. And we're gonna turn this into a lima bean growing area. So right here in front of me, I wanna start creating rows here, 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 and just keep going down until we get to about the duck area. I don't wanna bother her, but maybe like fit 3 or 4 rows in. And then we're gonna go over to this area here. And I don't know if you can tell on camera, but there's a ditch, or it's not deep, it's like a divot in the ground. But when it rains heavily, water comes down off the mountain here and flows and kind of wipes everything out. So I want to dig that out a little bit more and put that soil here and grow the lima beans in it. And that'll also prevent this area from getting flooded in heavy rains. And we can make a little channel for the water to run through. So that's the goal for right now. So we're just going to be digging around here because there's actually logs that are just sitting on the ground here that we're going to use to outline the garden bed. So, see, they're already starting to decompose. Alright, so I got one garden bed done so far, or outlined I should say. And we'll, like I said, dig this out. But the reason that I made it small up in the front here and bigger down here is because this land up here is higher up, and as it goes down, it's going down. So the logs are getting bigger, so that way I can, when I fill this up, it'll kind of stay more level. Even though more soil will be on this end over here than on this end, it'll kind of average out a little bit. Lima beans don't need really great soil, they just need soil. I'm not saying poor soil, but the soil that I have here will be fine. But for a first year to grow something else in, I would put more work into it than if I was doing lima beans. But since beans pull nitrogen from the air and improve the soil that they are put in, this will work great, because then after this I can use this for like squash or something like that, like zucchini or something. Maybe even tomatoes or cucumbers. Something that needs a lot of nutrients that can come in after the lima beans and use that nutrients that the lima beans have then stored in the ground. That was heavy. So let's go ahead and build, I'd say 2 more, because at the size of this, I can see the ratio. I think I'll only be able to get 2 more in here before I'd get over to her, and I don't want to bother the mama duck. Just now starting to rain too, so it's probably a good time that we're calling it a quits here. Might have to wait till tomorrow to finish this, or just work through the rain, but I don't want the camera to get wet. So I've gone ahead and completed the layout of the garden bed. I've had enough space to fit 3 of these garden beds in before getting to the duck nest over here, but she's only got about another week or 2 before she's done, and then I can build 1 more on the end over there. But we got plenty of room over here that we can expand to, and right now what I'm going to do is start to dig out this trench. The trench is going to go from right here to over here, where I'm standing now. So from the edge of that log over there to where I am, I need to clear this out, and I'm going to take all this soil and put it into the garden bed. So here we are, this trench is all now dug out. It probably could be dug out a couple more times. There's a lot of dirt that could be used in these garden beds here, which I'll probably, you know, dig out a little bit more, so that way when it rains heavily, it doesn't overflow the banks of the little ditch I dug and wash into this garden. I also need to like dig a trench here down this way where my finger's pointing, and then go up this channel here, but that's going to take a little bit of time. So for now, I'm mainly focused on this so we can get the crops in the ground to start making money. But other things can be done later on to improve the drainage of this area. Whew, I'm worn out. So I'm just going ahead and raking the soil a little bit, picking out any extra rocks, breaking up the soil clumps that may have not been broken up when I was digging, and tossing it. All right, so that's good. So we got some lima beans here, and I've been soaking these. You can see that a lot of them are already starting to sprout little tails, so that's good. We're gonna go ahead and plant these, and I'm gonna space them about 1 foot apart. So that should be good. I got this now all planted out. I'm gonna go ahead and clean up the other two and plant them, and then I'll join back with you guys after that. So this area here that used to be my broccoli bed is now gonna be the place that I'm gonna plant my okra. But before I do that, I wanna go ahead and get some mulch from the chicken area and sprinkle it on top and then plant the okra. So that way it's just a little bit easier. So I'm gonna go ahead and collect the mulch and put it on top right now. So I've gone ahead and laid out the okra seedlings. Some of these have 2, some of these have 1, some of them have 3 in a cup. So first I'm just gonna kind of have them spaced how they are, and then I'll do 1 in the center and kind of space them out evenly as I go. And there we go. So now we have the okra all planted, and that's just another thing off the bucket list that we can check off. And I'm probably done for today working in the garden. I am beat.